right, welcome to Two Sons Podcast. Hope all you guys are having a great week. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about a new Star Wars book that I started reading.
Oh, Legends material, I'm sure.
No, canon. This one,
Dude,
like,
how am I
there's
so far behind
references to Exegol and Kylo Ren and that kind of thing.
Is it just completely just fixing all the wrongs of episode 7, 8, and 9?
No.
It's adding fuel onto
Not
those.
exactly. Yeah, like that.
Oh,
That would be like me throwing coffee cups of water onto a house fire. So, I was actually scrolling through Instagram and I saw a reference to something. It said something along the lines of like in the new Star Wars book, The Rise and Fall of the Galactic Empire. There's a reference of Palpatine having, some of his artifacts discovered in the rubble on Exegol, blah, 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 something like that. I was like, that's interesting. So I immediately searched and I was like, okay, what is this book? The Rise and Fall of the Galactic Empire.
Yeah.
Well, it's a book that just came out in early July. And it's meant to read like a historical novel.
Oh,
so
sick.
it's supposed to be like a historian wrote it.
That sounds great.
Not an audiobook. I actually just downloaded the one on my phone, but I think there's like some pictures.
I don't know how to read, man.
I
You said
know.
there's pictures?
Yeah, there's pictures. I haven't seen any of the pictures yet, but allegedly there's some pictures.
If there's pictures, then I can do it.
So, but it's supposed to cover like the entire rise and fall of the Galactic Empire, but it kind of centers around Palpatine the whole time.
Cool.
And I only read the intro and like a little bit of the first chapter, but I've already hit like some pretty fascinating stuff that I think you'll be glad to hear.
Are we about to do some spoilers? Are you about to hit me up on some stuff? Or
okay,
are you
so
just
spoiler alert for Rise and Fall of the Galactic Empire, but this is stuff
for how many minutes? How long do we give people? 20 seconds, a minute and a half?
It's actually, you know what? I'm not even going to call it spoilers. This is all stuff you guys already know. So
Nerds.
You nerds. So, the whole idea is like this historian is like, yeah, I'm trying to piece together like Palpatine's life, right? But they kind of dive into this interesting concept, like the Galactic Empire actually, like through Palpatine, went back and like expunged a bunch of his history and like propagandized it to
see.
like make it which makes sense.
Those
like,
who win get to write history.
Yeah, like if you became chancellor and you had a bunch of skeletons in your closet and you had the ability to get rid of them, you would get rid of them, right?
Yeah.
And so, like for instance, they're like, yeah, like the historians, like, yeah, like there's, it's really difficult to figure out what happened to Palpatine's family. Like he came from this pretty wealthy family on Naboo.
Yeah, and
he's like, and there's
accident.
actually no record of how any of his family died. And the historian's like, is because the historian basically says he's like, I can't actually like just take what the history, what the records show and tell them to you guys because they're essentially propaganda from Palpatine. So what we actually have to do is we have to take what we know about Palpatine and use it to interpret the records.
Dude, what a cool perspective.
Yeah.
It's like a perspective within a perspective of the Star Wars universe.
Yeah, exactly.
That's so cool.
Totally agree.
Yeah, I like that.
And so it kind of gave like that unique kind of like historical perspective. So it's like, we don't know how his family died. There's no record of it, but if there's no reason for there to be no record of it. He's like, if they would have died of natural causes, that would have been an unremarkable thing.
Sure.
That you would expect to see when you looked up the records of a politician. And he's like, the fact that all of his family just died and there's no record of it is super bizarre. Right, guys? Wink, wink. And it's very much like a you guys can go ahead and try to put the pieces together if you want about what you think might have happened. Then it goes, they straight up say, they're like, in the ruins of Exegol, they found multiple like manuscripts that were like written by or dictated by Palpatine because he didn't have fingers at that point in time. They were
frail.
Yeah, he like somehow managed to transport his consciousness to another body that was like already kind of dead. I don't know what happened. We had like high infection risk with like the finger bone, like, like just kind of coming out of the skin, like
big
right
time
here.
infection risk.
So yeah, it just looked like a zombie. But anyway, so he straight up says in the manuscripts that that his master was Darth Plagueis. And it says that he served under Darth Plagueis for a certain amount of time, and then it says that it says that during Palpatine's youth, in the like 20s and 30s, it says in the records, like the actual Imperial records, that like Palpatine spent a lot of time traveling the galaxy,
which is very consistent with the Plagueis book.
Exactly. And then the historian is like, we can safely assume that this was probably when he was training with his Sith master,
and when his family died.
Yeah, and when
unexpectedly.
when his family
Actually,
died.
he was younger than that when he was like, how old was Palpatine?
Teenager.
Yeah, he's a teenager. Yeah,
but so that's as far as I've gotten into it. But
Dude,
like,
that's
and
cool.
I'm sure I'm gonna learn more as I'm reading the book. But
yeah,
I thought it was really fascinating because like the specific elements of the actual Darth Plagueis book that you and I so badly want maintained, there are specific elements in there that were canonized by the book, which
Very
are
cool.
basically now, okay, they are, one thing I will say, they are pretty heavy on like this is our best guess
so
what
they can change
happened.
it
So
if they
like
want.
if new information comes to this, and like as I'm reading the line, I'm like, okay, Disney's legal team.
I
like,
know,
thanks.
seriously.
But like, it's not even legal team, but it just
No, I know
feels
what
like
you
it
mean. Yeah.
feels like
Yeah,
that.
right.
It just feels like you're just covering your ass instead of just making quality content.
Right.
And which, random side note, I've been watching the Marvel movies with Carly, and it's like amazing how you can tell they had this end goal of like Thanos, and they like started building towards it like years before, and it's like, oh, amazing what happens when you plan
when
things.
you have some projections.
Yeah. And you actually sit and think things out. But
Unreal.
like anyway, the Palpatine murdering his family, and the Palpatine specifically training under Darth Plagueis in his 20s and 30s. Those are like pretty clear matchings with the concept of the of Darth Plagueis book. And so I'm excited by that because it just, to me, like makes it far more likely that that is the direction that the Lucasfilm story team is going with.
Yeah, it aligns with what we're seeing in Acolyte for sure. Yeah, except for we still get to enjoy the story of the stranger.
Yeah. Do you think that they're going to actually take the time to build this out, or do you think that they're going to more pivot towards following the stranger in Qimir, or the stranger in Osha?
I think they're going to do both. If they were smart, in my opinion, which who cares? But is like I said, hopefully there'd be like a season 2 of the Acolyte or whatever they want to call it, and it would be Qimir and Plagueis, their conflict coming to a head, and then season 3 would be Plagueis and Palpatine.
I have a really hard time with a couple of very specific things though from the Qimir storyline, and I was wondering what you thought about this. So first of all, let's just start with one small piece. Do you remember when Darth Plagueis straight up like tells Darth Sidious like it's impossible for a fallen Jedi to be a Sith?
No.
So this is in the Darth Plagueis book.
Okay.
And I'm surprised you don't remember it actually because you just re-listened
right.
to it.
So
no, I think it was when they were talking about Dooku and Sifo-Dyas.
Okay.
But Plagueis basically says like no fallen Jedi can truly be a Sith. Now, this is a philosophy. This is a Sith philosophy thing.
But Revan.
No, I know. That's what I mean. This is a Sith philosophy thing that I think is like maybe Plagueis' individual belief.
Right, yeah.
But like that other Sith obviously disagree with, because there's a bunch of examples of fallen Jedi that become Sith. Chimir's just the latest example.
Sure, yeah. Great point.
But Revan is a great example.
The example.
The example. There's Exar Kun was a fallen Jedi. Like I'm pretty sure Malak was a fallen Jedi. He was, because Revan and Malak were master apprentice in the Jedi Order. So like there are all these examples of Jedi that are Sith throughout the history, but I think it's fascinating because in the book, Plagueis specifically was a type of Sith Lord who felt that way. But what's fascinating, I love this, and I'm figuring it out on the fly here.
Right.
It'd be really cool to break that down in the show.
It would be.
To have Qimir fall away, and then for Plagueis to tell Sidious, like, yeah, actually, a Jedi can't be a Sith.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And that could be him coming to realizing his original suspicion. It's like, oh, I knew it. This guy couldn't do it.
One of the things that's kind of interesting too is fallen Jedi, as we find out from the Darth Bane final book, Dynasty of Evil. They're when Master War or whatever, not Master War, I can't remember what his name is, but the guy that like Sarah from Doan is like communicating with at the Jedi Temple before she finds the plaque that has all the lightsabers. in that kind of moment, like the master gives a lecture on the difference between a dark Jedi and a Sith. And one of the things he says is like dark Jedi kind of just want to like just get through. You know what I mean?
They just want to better themselves, or they're self-centered.
And
small picture.
They're selfish. They kind of are just using their power for their own personal benefit. What's fascinating about that is like Qimir's not quite that bad, because Qimir also has a pretty significant a message towards May, where it's like May only wants revenge, and she's not into the bigger goals. But then there's also this kind of thing from Qimir, and you hear it in his battle with Soul in episode 5. But remember when he's like, I just want the freedom to use my power,
interesting,
and to not be attacked. And so like I wonder if Qimir still even if he was more ambitious than May, if Qimir's ambition does not line up with what Darth Plagueis' ambition is. You know what I mean?
No, I totally agree with you. This is interesting.
Yeah, it is.
The fact that's mostly canon now. Like, obviously, you're just talking about how they can kind of change that on us. But the fact that that's mostly canon now is really exciting.
I think that Disney made the right call on this front, because, like, I actually am pro news stories. So, for instance,
right.
Like, if you were to say, like, hey, like, we're not going to do the Yuuzhan Vong. Like, it's a little far out there. We're going to do a different version of it with the Grisk. Or we're going to do Rey Skywalker launches a new Jedi Order, and then there's a Dark Jedi, and then there's, like, a whole... Like, they could do something different from the Yuuzhan Vong, and I'd be fine with that. But there are, like, certain things that I... Like, because it seems like there's 3 different paths that they can go. Completely new.
Right.
Kind of redesigning the old, which is like what they did with Thrawn, or what's the guy that they brought into? I'm trying to think. The bodyguard, the Nogri, Rook is another example. Like Rook is a very different character in the original Thrawn books. Like they kind of retread certain characters, but then there's like certain things that you kind of want to maintain the spirit of, and like for instance, like if they went back and did Revan. Like it's okay if you tweak certain parts of it, but like Revan is such an iconic character in Star Wars, you kind of have to maintain some elements of what makes Revan.
For sure.
Say like
it'd be ridiculous for them not to do that.
Exactly.
Right. Like why trample on like nerds' love for a specific character, and like why have that character just to have the name and just to ruin the character in our eyes, right?
No, 100% agree. Yeah. Like if you want to have Revan, like if there's a loose framework, if you want to like kind of explore around different things with Revan, that's fine. But the loose framework needs to be he fights the Mandalorian Wars, wins, but in the process, it drives him. He goes into the unknown regions and runs into the Sith Empire and becomes a Sith Lord, and then returns. Like there are certain elements of it that you have to maintain,
for sure.
You know, like a loose framework, essentially.
Yeah. And for whatever it's worth, too, like there's so much good content there that they could use. Like it'd be one thing if it was all trash, you know, but it's not. It's really, really good. So I'm with you. Like I'm down for the new storytelling within the framework, like the major pillars that we know to exist in Star Wars, right? That we've developed Star Wars around.
And Plagueis is one of those pillars.
For sure.
And so he kind of needs to be maintained. And like there specifically is I saw another like Instagram something that you know, it's interesting. As I scroll through Instagram, I keep getting these like this like little window that shows up on the screen that kind of links to threads.
Yeah, dude, I keep getting those. Yeah. And I'm like, that looks really interesting. And then I click it, and then it asks me to download that app, and I'm like, dude, no.
So I actually have Threads because I downloaded it a long time ago for work, and like so I do click on those, and they're all super interesting.
Right.
And like, but one of them I clicked on said that apparently there's some big Disney event coming up soon, and that they're expecting a major announcement involving Acolyte season 2.
Oh, great.
So hopefully, that's something that they dive into. And like, I mean, if it's money, I'm like, dude, just figure out a way to make it cheaper, because you guys blew way too much money on that last one.
Oh my gosh.
But
yeah, not talking too much trash, but I'm just gonna do a little bit. Like the amount that Game of Thrones spent, or House of the Dragon spent, and the quality in which we got to experience in comparison to the Acolyte and the way that felt was so different for it being like similar budgets.
Dude, one other thing one random detail that has bothered me, and I saw an Instagram post about this the other day, and I was like, I know, but like the lightsabers look so shitty now compared to the way that they used to.
Oh, you think so?
There's an upside. The upside is because what they're doing is they're actually using those like lightsabers you get at Disney World. Right?
Yeah.
They're using nicer versions of those.
Instead of like metal rods.
Instead of metal rods that they CGI the blade over. The upside is you get the glow. And the glow leads to some really cool like cinematography.
Refraction or whatever it was.
That was never properly captured in the old old movies. But there's just nothing that one, you can like visibly see a difference in the way the lightsabers clash. They have like a little bit of a give to them.
Yeah.
They like literally give a little, and you can see because they can't actually hit each other hard because they would literally break. Like they kind of hold back a little bit in their strikes.
It looks more choreographed.
It looks a lot more choreographed. And so like but the big one for me is there's like a glow that protrudes out from the lightsaber that should swallow up the entirety of whatever that like existing kind of like plasticky cylinder is. And they always like just give it not quite enough glow.
Dude, that's fair.
So it looks almost like a dim lightsaber. And the specific detail, in the first time I noticed this, and it pissed me off actually, was in the Mandalorian season 2 finale when Luke Skywalker shows up. One, his lightsaber's like a solid like 6 inches too short. And then 2, it looks green instead of white with a green outline. That like really bothers me.
No, I feel you. I'm down for that. There's like all lightsabers, especially in the original movies, all lightsabers look white at their core.
White. They're white.
White.
With like, a thin color outline.
Yeah, I agree. I'm down for that too.
And they have they almost look like fuzzy with like how like distorted the outline is.
Right. Which would make sense for what a lightsaber is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And like it actually, when you're watching some of these shows, it actually looks like they're playing with toys.
I agree with you. Because like they swing really fast and then it slows down like right before they hit. I agree with you.
And I get the trade-off. And like there are like, for instance, there's in the dark forest when they're fighting, there's a lot of like gold on the branches and yellow and purple and blah, 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 all that. There's a lot of really cool color effects they get from it, so there's upside, but yeah, it's just not my favorite.
I like that take for sure. But and then Disney's like, yeah, it's super expensive to do these lightsabers, and that's why we wasted so much money on Acolyte. $1
million per lightsaber.
Oh my gosh, could you imagine?
I'm curious to see what they end up doing though, because like I think that there's two different directions too that they could go that gets a little tricky from the standpoint of like really capturing the audience. So for instance, as Leslie Headland said, the Acolyte was about May and Osha. And as we've talked about, May and Osha are like two kind of profoundly, like they're not the most interesting character in that show by far. But Qimir is now attached to May and Osha, and Qimir was one of the most interesting pieces of the show. But at the same time, like Plagueis is like this other entity, and we know Plagueis and Qimir are going to experience some sort of separation. And so that's where I'm really curious to see which way they go, because I think there'd be like a conventional wisdom piece that'd be like, hey, we've invested in these actors. We've made names for them. They've made names for themselves. May, Osha, and Qimir. And like they're kind of this entity that we can follow, but that entity takes us down this weird path where like now we're going back into that like subsidiary storyline where it's like if Plagueis were to allow Qimir to live, it would only be because he doesn't view him as a threat. If he doesn't view him as a threat, that would imply that he's just going to go disappear into the ether and do a whole lot of nothing, or maybe launch the Knights of Ren, who were like literally so not powerful that Palpatine himself was like, nah, Knights of Ren, whatever. Right. And then eventually they ended up serving him. Right. So like it doesn't, like I'm just hoping that they end up like kind of when that path bifurcates. Like it's one thing if you tell that the story of them kind of splitting, but I think you got to follow the Plagueis storyline at some point.
I completely agree. Like May and Osha had their time, and I think it would be way better for the audience if this next Acolyte series or season was about the true Sith.
No, I totally agree.
I don't see May or Osha being a true Sith. That just isn't there for me for some reason.
They don't have the fire or the passion for it, and it like there's something about every Sith Lord where it's like, okay, like Bane literally like Cortosis Minor who was like bullied by his own father and all of his friends.
Yeah.
It's like
named Bane for a reason.
Yeah. And then like there's like Plagueis and Palpatine are a little more complicated, but like even like Plagueis was like born by a lowborn woman, if I remember correctly, and so like then his siblings hated him.
Yeah.
And then there's like Palpatine specifically like was like his family hated him and like put it like now they were like obviously evil from the jump,
right?
Like there's a very different like character kind of like construction of those characters, and May and Osha just kind of seem to like nice,
right? No, I agree.
Word.
And it's not just the May and Osha thing, because you and I were just talking about the fact that like Qimir is this terribly interesting character. Like he's grown on me so much. He's actually at this point one of my maybe top 15
love Qimir
characters in Star Wars. He's not a true Sith either. It's kind of like what my argument is like, yes, like he's a badass, don't get me wrong, like super powerful, terribly interesting, love his helmet, cortosis infused, like everything is so cool, but we know that he most likely, if things are going to go the way we expect them to, still just doesn't have the gumption to be that true Sith level, like a Plagueis, a Palpatine, a Bane, a Revan, right? So
do you think Osha turns him back to the light?
I don't know. There's a chance. Dude, that'd be actually interesting. That'd be super interesting.
Because Osha doesn't make sense as a Sith at all.
No.
Other than that she hates the Jedi.
Yeah, and she's so burdened by like her past, which can actually, fuel a Sith. We see that with Anakin, right? There's a chance, man. I think at the very end of the day though, like Qimir has to die at the blade of Plagueis. I think that would be super satisfying in my opinion. And I think it would make the most sense. And not that I want like fan fodder, but I think, logistically and in order to make an audience happy, I think that's what would do it.
An actual Sith rule of two conflict would just be like incredible.
It'd be so cool.
Too. I agree with you. What I want is for Qimir to die by Plagueis' blade. But I think we're going to get Qimir ends up becoming the founder of the Knights of Ren. I have a feeling that's going to be what we get, which is like I find to be and it's like
that'd be annoying.
It's kind of like when I'm like as I'm reading this historian book, it's like actually as we find out, the Empire wasn't actually defeated because there was this First Order, and then it's like, gosh, but then but it gets worse. It goes in the historian book. It's like, but actually, as it turned out, it wasn't even the First Order. There was the Final Order.
The Final Order, I know.
It's like, and you're just like, this literally sounds absurd.
I know.
And so it's kind of crazy as they're like trying to tie together these like concepts, and it's like Palpatine, Naboo, Trade Federation, blah, 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 Final Order, Exegol, blah, 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 Snoke. Yeah, and it's like when you're listening to all this stuff, you're like, like, it's
I know.
So like, that's the thing is like, I think that Disney needs to have a meeting of the minds where they sit down and they basically go like, hey, listen, like
dude,
if you want to take Rey and Finn or whoever else and some specific characters from the sequel trilogy, and you kind of want to build a different storyline to the future with them, go ahead, but kind of stop tying, like almost like separate those two entities entirely and stop trying to tie them together, because when you tie them together, you just piss me off.
Well, dude, and the Knights of Ren, again, and this is the same with Snoke. Like, when you first meet the Knights of Ren, just like when you first meet Snoke, you're thinking to yourself, oh, these are super interesting characters. This could be great. And then they literally just fizzle out.
Yeah, they were in that vision, remember?
Into nothing.
They were in that vision in the Force Awakens video, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is super fascinating.
Yeah.
Then they just don't appear in the second one. They're just not there.
And like good old Kylo Ren said, let the past die.
Yeah.
And I think at this point you kind of just cut your losses with what Snoke is, with what the Knights of Ren are. And I hope so badly that Qimir's legacy is not the Knights of Ren, which turn into nothing. Mm-hmm. I hope his legacy is dying at the hand of Plagueis, which would be a way cooler legacy. In my opinion.
No, I agree with you.
Gosh, I hope they don't turn this into a Knights of Ren thing.
I'm okay with them doing a little bit of work there as long as they also build out the Plagueis story. It's just, you can't just do the Knights of Ren story, because that to me is where it would get boring.
Maybe. All right, so you're saying like maybe a Qimir starts the Order. They continue to survive, but Qimir is still killed by Plagueis, played by Plagueis. Is that what you're saying?
It would be so. Think of it like this. It would make sense that if you were to tell the Palpatine Plagueis storyline, you would need conflict.
Yeah, right.
And the conflict can't be directly with the Jedi because they don't actually run into each other until much later, right? So, like, you could have them going with their machinations, but, like, you could literally have Qimir and Osha be their direct opponent. It could literally... What if Qimir and Osha... Like, what if Qimir ran away and then he just basically straight up declared himself the Dark Lord of the Sith, and then Plagueis had to, like, find a way to get rid of him.
Hunt him down.
Or, like, or something along those lines. Like, I'm cool with them building that out. My thing is, like, you have to also build out Plagueis. And so, like, for example, if you wanted to do Acolyte Season 2, which, like, showed Qimir and Osha kind of doing their own thing, somehow getting separated from Plagueis, I would like a separate production at some point in the future that's, like, you remember when they did, like, Tales of the Empire, Tales of the Jedi? If you did, like, Tales of the Sith.
Dude, that could be cool.
And like, and that would be a nice counter for the fact that you wouldn't have to recast Palpatine.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have to do a bunch of CGI Plagueis. You could do cartoon Plagueis and cartoon. Point. Like, there's a bunch of different things you could do. I just think that story
cartoon Stranger would be really cool, too.
Oh, yeah. That would be cool. And you could do it, like, almost anime.
Yeah. Seeing in Rebels, like, Vader cartoonized. Is that a word? Is really cool.
Yeah. No, I think there's a bunch of cool stuff they could do there. I just hope that they build it all out. Did you want to go over some of the comment rating scores that we saw?
Oh yeah.
So yeah, Luke had put together or asked you guys to rank the specific score out of 100 that you would give to the Acolyte. So we're going to go over some of those, and then I'm going to tell you a little bit about my money tournament. Ask how you're doing because we haven't talked much.
Let me pull this up.
I haven't. Here we go. Let's see.
Honest rating is 83. Main B minus. Quote B minus. Main gripe is Disney Star Wars likes witches for some reason. Show does a great job laying groundwork for future potential while currently adding to lore and introducing new characters. I think it's an honest thing. Like, yeah, Disney does love witches. But that's probably a product of Dave Filoni, so it's approved by Two Sons podcast.
I like the witches. I just could have done without the song.
Oh gosh, yes.
The song was a little much.
No, we are one. We are two. We are
the
many.
Power of two. The power of the power of one. The power of two. The power of many.
That voiceover of Darth Vader when Luke has his when Luke is about to die at the hand of Vader, and he's like. Submit to the power of many, like that. So funny.
Dude, Star Wars Instagram is just A+ content.
It is. It really is. I'd give the show a 70 to a 75. I give them a lot of credit for getting away from the Skywalker saga into a different time period. I do hope for future shows where they expand deeper into High Republic era for those who don't read the books, similar to what Clone Wars was. That's a good take. Yeah. The combat scenes were some of the best in the franchise.
I agree.
Yep, I think that's good too. Another 85.
Aside from the bad lightsabers.
This is all in order too, so I haven't like groomed these. Another 85. Let's see here. I wish the episodes were longer and that there was more character
That's something
development.
I wish they would get over is like start doing the Game of Thrones thing. Every episode should be an hour.
Yeah. 75 still has a lot of room to grow. That's a synopsis of that comment. 78. So this was way better than what I was expecting.
Yeah.
I don't know how you feel about
Generally
that.
Positive. Yeah.
You guys should rank all the seasons of live-action Star Wars. Would make a great video. And
that'd be fun.
They go on to say, my list is Mando Season 2, Mando Season 1, Ahsoka, Kenobi, Acolyte, Andor, Book of Boba, and Mando 3.
That'd be a fun one to do one day.
Low 80, and then this one's fun. 35. Problems.
Shit.
Yeah. Problems at every turn. I couldn't settle in at all because something ridiculous kept slapping me in the eyeballs.
That's like when Luke talks about getting pulled out of the universe.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I imagine.
This is for cartoon watchers, not novel readers. Ooh, very astute. And still about half the score I'd give to those tunes. Is that hate on like Clone Wars and Rebels?
I don't think so. Maybe.
Yeah. For the person, should I mention them? At Stivana 7022. Are you talking about the like Star Wars, like Rebels and Clone Wars as like cartoons that you don't like, or are you talking about something else? Solid 75. So yeah, pretty good. Yeah. 86.
I think I'm in the high 80s.
Yeah,
where I'm at.
Laker Eric, who's been with us for a long time,
shout out
says
Laker Eric.
Trash series. So it sounds like people liked it better than what we'd expect.
Yeah, I had it. It ended strong. Episodes 5, 6, 7, and 8 were good. The one thing, my major complaints were episode 3 was completely off the rails with some of the weird shit that they did, and then towards the tail end of the season when they had obvious opportunities to do what Game of Thrones does, where you just. And by the way, this is something you can easily do by pushing to help push the episodes to 60 minutes. Is like, hey, like, how about you have Qimir and Osha sit down and have a 5-minute conversation where you talk a little bit about their past? Like,
dude,
that,
you're totally right.
But they literally are so handcuffed by their lack of a coherent structure and plan for the story,
dude,
that they can't talk about it.
Yeah, let the viewer sink their nails into something, right? Like when you and I watch Game of Thrones or House of the Dragon, we're listening to every single word, and these episodes are 70 minutes long. Yeah. And it's not like we're like, oh, like we got distracted, we're children. It's like, no, like have some confidence in your audience and give them something to chew on, something to think about. Yeah. And maybe that is one of my biggest gripes. I didn't realize that until now, but like there's not a whole lot to think about or chew on when it comes to digesting these like modern Star Wars stories. Aside from the books you do get to digest a little bit more. But it does feel a little bit kind of dumbed down, maybe.
The books books under Disney out, like the High Republic has been better, but the books under Disney, like for instance, like the Dark Lords of the Sith book that I read, like they are also trapped under narrative weight. They also are like, we can't say too much about this, and it's like, I'm so excited to read Dark Lord: The Rise of Darth Vader.
Yes,
which is one that we got to read after, like in this fall time, because like I'm expecting to see these incredible conversations between Palpatine and Vader about the Bane lineage and about Plagueis and about Venemus and about Tenebris and all this different stuff, and like all of these like kind of like really cool because like Palpatine was always talking with Anakin under the guise of the Chancellor.
Right.
Now he's revealed as the Sith. I'm excited to see what those conversations are.
Yeah.
When I read the Disney canon Vader Palpatine book, it
nothing to digest.
All of it, like it literally sounded like something dark side, something complete. Like that's literally the shit Palpatine's saying to Vader, and you're like, we're accomplishing nothing here. Whereas like Game of Thrones,
you're saying nothing fast.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. In Game of Thrones, a great example is like early on in the show, you find out like, oh, Jaime Lannister is the Kingslayer. He's the Kingslayer, but like every episode, there's like another conversation about the Kingslayer where you find out a little bit more. Where it's like, wait, actually, like, at that point in time, the king had literally ordered the burning of the entire city, and like Jaime's like telling this to this person, and then Jaime tells the story again, and he's like, actually, like he ordered the necromancer or the whatever you call it, the pyromancer, to burn the city down. And he's like, so I went over and I killed the pyromancer, and then I went back over to the king, and then the king ran to go do it himself, and I had to stab him. But it's like he's telling these stories, and like as these conversations, you're like learning more about the past, and you're learning more about the past. And so for instance, like why in the world isn't Qimir sitting there like taking his shirt off to take a dip, and then he gets out, and then Osha goes like, where'd you get that scar? Right. And then he goes like, I'll tell you one day. And then maybe like later on in the episode, they're sitting by the fire, and then he goes like, well, you know, back when I was a Jedi, X, Y, Z. Like, why is there not more of that? And it's literally because Disney doesn't know what they want to do.
No,
like, that's
right.
Literally it. Like Disney purchased Star Wars in 2012, if I remember correctly. So like we are talking about over a decade they've had to kind of figure this out. They don't know what they're going to do.
And it's slightly better, like under Dave. It is, but it has so much room to improve still. And this is coming from two dudes who liked the Acolyte. Like, we were super excited. Like, don't get us wrong. Like, there's still a lot to enjoy here, but in comparison to something like the storytelling of House of the Dragon, it's so different.
This is why I have B+. So what did you have it ranked at?
I would agree with you. I'd give it a B+. Yeah, I think, so much room for dude, it's so hard because you and I are such Star Wars nerds. So like, we're so stupid in the fact that, like, anything Star Wars, we're like, oh my gosh, like, this is so great, and I'll give myself crap for that. But I'd give it a B or B+. Yeah, I think it was really, really good, but so much room to improve, and it's kind of exponential. Like, in order to get that improvement, you have to work so much harder, right? Like, it's one thing to go from like a D rating to a C rating. That's some effort. C rating to a B rating, that's a lot of effort. In order to go from a B rating to an A+ rating, that is so much effort for not a whole lot of points gained, but really that's what makes the difference. That's what makes the show great. That's what makes an Olympian
and it's
Olympian.
Rare. Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. And like, how many shows do we see that like Game of Thrones, for instance, is a show that, like, especially in the heart of it, season 5, season 6, like where you're legitimately like, this is A+ television.
Right.
Every scene is like you're glued to the screen. Every dialogue is perfect. Every action scene is perfect. Like, that's rare. Mm-hmm. It's like, how often do we, like, I really liked Fallout. Not an A+.
No.
It's probably an A-, B+.
Yeah, I'd give it a B+. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like, they're like,
and it's so funny because if you think about like the logistics of like what Fallout is compared to Acolyte, the storytelling of Fallout's better.
It's
than
better.
Acolyte. Yeah.
It's fucking
we're
better.
We're just Star Wars nerds and like it more, or the
exactly.
same. Yeah. So it's tough. Like,
that's
we're so biased.
Super interesting.
We're so biased, right?
How are you doing, man?
I'm doing all right. Yeah. It's been
How's
busy.
G Guy been through all of this craziness?
He's good, dude. He's such a tank.
He's a tank.
He just goes with us. Like, so for our viewers, my wife and I had to go to Flagstaff and for like a family matter. And and Flag is about 4 hours from here, about 4.5 if you have a toddler. And most of the time he just sat in his car seat and just babbled to us, and we hung out. He did so good, like, in every situation. We were always eating on the fly, and he was just like eating whatever we had. He was hanging. He's like literally such a good kid. Like, we had stopped at my aunt and uncle's house in order to drop off the grotto that I had made for my grandma, like the Mary grotto. And it was like super late, and he just hung out with his cousin, did his thing. We put him back in his car seat. He fell asleep until we got to Flag, and then just went right to bed. Like, he's literally such a dream child. He's so good.
How did the grotto turn out? Did it turn out good?
Beautiful, man. I didn't take a picture of it.
You didn't take a picture?
No, so I completed it. It looked gorgeous. Like, we had it set up. We had a light on it, and it was starting to get late. It looked gorgeous. Like, my grandma loved it.
You need to ask her to send you a picture.
I know, I need to. Yeah. And it looked great. Yeah, so it's like cedar, and I sealed it, and it looks really, really good.
Did G do okay with you working as much as you worked over the weekend?
Yeah. He so, like, our house is set up mostly for a toddler. It is so evident when you're in someone else's house when they have like tiny trinkets everywhere.
You're like, this is not
and
ideal.
They're all toddler
Oh, and
height.
G has like radar for that. He's like, I'm going.
Oh my gosh! He grabbed this glass bowl that was made in the Great Depression, like this beautiful bowl. Right? He grabs it and goes like this to throw it. And I literally grabbed his hand right at the last second and put it back. And then he's like one of those toys where you like spin the back and then they like walk off. Like, you literally just like pick him up, set him down, and then he just goes the other way.
You just point him and shoot him.
Dude, but he did great. And I know you've been super busy too, and you had your tournament. How was that?
Yeah,
break that down.
Well, yeah. So Vegas went well. We already talked about. I had that money tournament last weekend. It was kind of crazy because we put together a really good team. We had 3 dudes with over a 6'10" wingspan, so we were like super long and super athletic.
Wow.
We had a couple of really good guards. Like, we put a team together, but there was a team from Phoenix that was really good in the tournament too. And so what was kind of weird was because it was summertime, the air conditioning in the gym was off.
What?
And like the guy who was running the tournament like just wouldn't call to get the security team to turn the air conditioning on.
Oh,
so
my
like
gosh.
We played the entire day, and like it was like mid 80s in the arena and like humid because it had been raining a lot.
People were just complaining the entire time.
Well, it turned into like the early games weren't as bad because they were spaced out really far and you could go take a break. But like towards the end, we had to play a bunch of games in a row.
And I'm
like,
sure it got hotter as the day progressed.
And it got hotter as the day went on. And then like you were just so covered in sweat that like I remember sitting there thinking like, this is probably the basketball equivalent of like playing football in the rain. You know, like my little brother played football at West Point, and I watched him play in a hurricane once. Like the rain bands of a hurricane were slamming into Duke. He was playing at Duke. And I mean, he played at West Point, but they were playing at Duke as a team. And like Army had like 6 fumbles in the game, and they were playing on turf too.
Wow.
My brothers played in rain game. My older brothers played in rain games like on grass and stuff.
Yeah.
Like so, that's what I imagine, because like I remember there was like a moment in one of the championship games where like I got fouled and I'm going to the free throw line, and like my arms are completely covered in sweat, the back of my hands are covered in sweat, the front of my hands are covered in sweat, my shirt is completely covered in sweat, my shorts are completely covered in sweat, my legs are completely covered in sweat, and the ball's covered in sweat.
Yeah.
And so like I'm standing there, and I'm like looking, and I'm like the ball's like slipping around in my hands, and I'm like, this is fucking insane.
Yeah, that
but
sucks.
everyone was in the same conditions.
Sure.
Like,
what are you gonna do?
It was so crazy. Anytime anybody fell down, we had to stop the game to bring towels out on the court and wipe the floor because there was so much moisture on the floor, people would have gotten hurt. Yeah. Like, it was legitimately one of the craziest conditions, the craziest basketball conditions I've ever played in. But what was fun about it was, like, it became a very different kind of game in the sense that, like, the skill stuff was still there, and there were a lot of good players on the court, so, like, there were still guys making plays, but it turned into a rock fight.
Yeah.
And, like that is one of my favorite kinds of basketball.
I can totally understand that.
And like, and mainly just because it's one of my best advantages. Like, I'm bigger and stronger than most of the basketball players that I play against. And so like, that's a setting where I can kind of like unleash that specific skill.
Yeah.
But like we won the first game if you led by 30 in the second half, it was a forfeit. So we won the first game by leading by 30 in the second half. We won the second game by leading by 30 in the second half. To end the game, we got a lob off the glass. The third game is the championship game of the winners bracket against the Phoenix team. And we play them, and it's this knockdown, drag out fight of a game, and they barely beat us. And they beat us by like 5. Okay. And like, there was a couple of iffy calls at the end, and it was just one of those things where it kind of felt like we got robbed. But at the same time, like we didn't get it done, and we expended a ton of energy. And like, I remember sitting on the sideline, like, oh my gosh, like I just like poured my entire heart and soul into that game, and we lost. So then we had to go down to the losers bracket. So like, because that was if we would have won all our games, we would have only had to win 4 games, then we would have been done.
Yeah.
But because we lost at the championship game of the winners bracket, now we had to win 6 games because we had to go down to the losers bracket, beat the winner of the losers bracket.
That was in one day?
All in one day. Then we had to turn back around and go back to play the Phoenix team, and we had to beat them twice because it was double elimination.
That is too much basketball.
So literally, we lost to the Phoenix team, went down and played the winner of the losers bracket, made them forfeit. Then we went back up and played the Phoenix team, and like they were up 28-18 at one point. Like, there was legitimately like, and this is one of my favorite things about sports, like, because there was like the thought starts to creep into your mind. It's almost like I talk about it on my show all the time, like a fear of losing.
Yeah.
There's this thought that creeps into your mind, like, holy shit, we might lose to these guys. And like, I had real stake in it because I was one of the 2 guys who fronted the money for the entry fee. So like, and my buddy Josh, like, we put the money down for this tournament. So like, we have some real stake in it. And we're down 28-18, and like, it starts to creep into your head, but like, your response to that is like you just play harder.
Let's just do this.
You just play harder.
Yeah.
And like, we grinded it back, and it was 40-34. These are how low scoring these games were because of the wet. Everything was soaking wet because of the gym. But it was 40-34 with like 5 minutes left in the game, and we were down. And they did not score the rest of the game. What? And we ended up beating them 42-40, barely squeezed it out. They had the ball in the final possession, and one of our lanky dudes in the front court got a block on a pull-up 3-point shot.
No
just blocked
way.
It. So we ended up winning. So then they call for the final championship game. They set it up as just one half. So we had been playing we had been playing like 2 18-minute halves, but instead of making us beat them in another full game because it was already so late into the day, it was like 9 o'clock at this point.
Yeah.
They were like, let's just play one half. So we're going to play 18 minutes for all the money, right? And like,
was the other team down for that, or were they pissed?
Everyone was down for it because
Okay.
we were tired. Like we were tired, but like, as you can probably imagine, we kind of had a momentum because we were down 28-18. Then it was 40-34. Then we won. So like we were kind of starting to gain our footing against them. And the main thing was like they were a little bit more skilled than us. They had some of these Phoenix wings that were like insanely good, like fucking crazy good.
Really?
And so like they had a lot of really high level offensive players, but we were bigger and more athletic.
Yeah.
And so we started to wear on them. And like I said, at the end of that other game, they could not score over the final 5 minutes. We went into overtime again. They could not score. We ended up jumping up on them like 25-10.
Wow.
And then there was a bad call. And it was a bad call. Like I reached in and I like skated over the ball, but I ended up hitting the guy in the face.
Yeah.
And it right in front of the ref. And the ref should have called it. But it should have just been sideline out of bounds.
Sure.
Like it wasn't a meaningful call in the game.
Right.
We were up 25-10. The game was basically over. Like we were gonna win. But the dude like lost his mind on the ref, and then they started getting into it, and then like a couple guys got ejected. We had like 6 technical free throws, and then like some of their fans started getting into it. Then when their fans started getting into it, they actually called the tournament, and then we got all the cash.
But
it was like, it was one of those ones where like we were gonna win anyway. We were gonna win anyway. But it was one of the most satisfying tournaments that I've ever played in, because one, the conditions made it like a very much
super unique.
Like there were these moments where I would miss a 3 and like I'd be like, man, like the damn ball is like soaking wet, blah blah blah. And then I'd have like this conversation with myself in the back of my head. I'd be like, stop being a pussy and fucking find a way to fight in this game, and like find a way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like, so like in the overtime period, I just went to the post and like I just started fucking bullying this kid and like getting right at the basket. And then I just devoted all my energy towards like defense and like just grabbing every rebound and like just tried to like just.
What else are you going to do in a wet game?
Yeah.
You got to play D.
Yeah,
that's how you win that game then.
Exactly. It literally felt like the House of the Dragon finale when Thailand and the Pirate Queen were like fighting in the mud. Like that's literally what the game was like. Like it was crazy. So like, but it felt good because like I've got the MVP basketball in there. I've got my little trophy. We won the cash. We didn't lose the money. But it was a fun one because like we earned it. And dude, also never been that sore.
Oh, I can't
in my entire life.
Dude, when I played basketball with you, like a month and a half ago, it was one game, and that one game I played not a lot, and I was incredibly sore following that. Like you just use muscles that you typically don't, or I was using muscles that I typically
playing basketball or not playing basketball is hard.
Holy cow. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Dude, it's funny that you're talking about how hot it was and like how wet it was. They call rain the great equalizer in F1.
Oh, really?
And we're like, all of a sudden, like Haas is like playing with the big boys up at top. You know, Haas Racing is like famously not that great of a team, and then they go up against like Red Bull Racing, right? And when it's a wet day, the fans kind of get excited about it because it's not just like a Verstappen Hamilton 1-2, right? Like it's super interesting when the conditions are different and when it becomes like a battle.
Is there a certain amount of rain where they'll call the race?
Yeah, there is. Like if the cars, like not too long ago, and when I say not too long ago, I mean like within the last few years. I think in Monaco it was super rainy. And like the cars were like filling with water, and they're like, "Yeah, we can't race in this." You know what I mean? But it's remarkable. Like they race in some really wet conditions, and what's hard is those cars just turn the water into mist as soon as they drive over it. So whoever's driving behind them is literally driving through mist.
So they can't see anything.
They can't see anything, but they still race, which is bizarre.
They probably know the track incredibly well.
They do, but it gets really, really dangerous at times. They even, like the FIA, who's like the governing board of F1, they tried to make these blocks, and they were testing these wheel wells that went around the wheels in order to try and decrease mist, and it didn't help at all.
Wow, that's interesting.
So it is interesting, but yeah, it just reminded me of that. Where like it's fun to see sports turn into a battle of the wills. Right, and that's cool to see. I love that.
It's like golf. Like golf is such an interesting sport in the same way where it's like you go to the range and you're just hitting these balls and you're hitting these balls, and then like you find out pretty quickly that like every single golf shot that you end up hitting, except for your tee shots and your putts, tends to have like an improvisational element to it. It's like, oh, my feet are above the ball, my feet are below the ball.
I'm
in
this guy's backyard.
Or yeah, exactly. Or like this lie is a little weird. Like the big one that messes with me is like the feet above or below the ball. Like when the fairway's like on a tilt, where like it just kind of messes with your swing because your body like has a tendency to like lean.
For sure.
Like, and that's the thing. It's like golf is like a good percentage of golf is like how well can you improvise.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And
and
that's the thing. Like basketball has a certain like static set of conditions, and that's kind of what makes it unique from other sports is there's not a ton of that.
Yeah.
But like what I appreciated about that is like that tournament turned into very much like a like an improvisation kind of thing. Yeah. Now basketball does have it because the way it works out for the most part in basketball is like it'll be like a every game takes on a different feel. Like this is a 3-point shooting game. This is more of a dogfight kind of game. This game is very high paced. This game is very slow paced. This game is very physical. This game is being officiated very ticky tack. Like, and you kind of have to like figure out how to slot your skills into that specific type of game. But yeah, that tournament was fun. I did have one other thing I wanted to hit with you before we got out of here. I leave on Thursday to go to Vegas to go to the Sphere. Yeah, and I'm actually super interested in this like 3-finger John Mayer thing. What? So did you not see the thing? I think I texted it to you, or at least I texted it to our friends group chat. But like the John Mayer shut his finger in his car door. No, his index finger on his left hand.
Dude, I didn't know. I didn't know that.
I've been trying to explain this to Carly, but like you think like, oh, index finger, you lost 10% of like your hand function. Yeah. But specifically with guitar, like your index finger is like the equator for everything. So it's like your bar chord that you set for everything. So like everything kind of like this is the equator that everything kind of works back and forth from, and it is kind of vitally important. And so I would call it like losing half of your hand function, not 10% when it comes to guitar.
I can get down for that.
And so the other day, because John's like, I'm going to be playing. He's like, I've been practicing with 3 fingers nonstop. I'm gonna figure out how to do it. I think it sounds pretty good. I'll see you guys at the show on Thursday. And I'm like, okay, that's interesting. So I like went back into my room just for fun, and I'm like, I'm just gonna like try playing with 3 fingers just for fun. And again, we're talking just these 3 fingers, and I did it for like 5 seconds, and I'm like, no,
this is awful.
This
is not very fun.
And I'm like, and I immediately was like, there's no way he's gonna be able to play these Dead shows.
But he has a perception of music where he can like see music.
Oh yeah,
he'll figure it out, dude. All right, he's playing in the rain.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No, like, exactly. But he did. So he already did 3 shows last week, and I've looked at a bunch of the videos.
It's all right,
and it sounds pretty good. Like now, I can tell he's clearly hampered.
Sure.
But it still sounds really good. And so like there's this element where it's like, have you ever shut your finger in a door before?
Yes.
Okay, we all have, right?
Yes.
So dude, I shut mine in an old like 1980s Suburban.
Just super, super safe.
And like, yeah, exactly. The whole fingernail came off at one point. But like I remember it like swelling up crazy, and then the nail kind of slowly worked its way off, and then it fell off, and then like the new nail like kind of came in.
Yeah.
That was what I remember happening. But like there was a phase after the nail fell off where like I could still use the finger pretty normally. It just kind of looked kind of gnarly on the top. And so like there's one of 2 outcomes. One, he's ready to go by Thursday.
And using his whole hand.
In which case, great, normal Dead show. That'll be awesome. I've already seen 2 of them at the Sphere. They're incredible. If he's playing with 3 fingers for the Thursday, Friday set, like there'll be a very small part of me that's like, because this kind of sucks because we're going to get a limited version of John Mayer.
Right.
But the rest of me is kind of like, I'm kind of just curious to see it. Like I want to see John Mayer's flu game. Like I want to see his game in the rain. I want to see how I want to see John Mayer like adapt and figure out how to.
I'd want to see that too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll look it up because I want to see what he sounds like with 3 fingers.
I'll send you a video. I have a couple that I'll send you. They're in the post that he posted because like he put the picture of his finger. And he said something that I thought was super fascinating about kind of like responsibility, which is something I've always found super fascinating. He goes, last Thursday I injured my left index finger truck door, and the first thing that went through my mind was I really need that finger in a week. Yeah, no shit. I need all my fingers, but the left index is the team captain of my fretting hand. It will heal just fine, but will be out of commission for a while. In the meantime, I've spent every day practicing guitar using the other 3 fingers, and I think I have it sounding pretty good. I have always felt like every part of me belongs to these shows, and it's my responsibility to return to the stage each night without screwing up the equipment. And I'm sorry for the misadventure here. The power of the music and the love for these shows. But like, I actually think like he legitimately is pissed off at himself because he feels like he damaged the equipment. And like the personal responsibility element is super fascinating to me because like John Mayer, I've seen him in concert 5 times now. This will be my 6th and 7th times. Every performance has a very consistent high level, and I have this other working theory that it has a lot to do with him not being like he doesn't drink alcohol at all, and alcohol just leads to these wild swings and like
yes it does
like, of how you feel. So like yes it does, known fact.
Yeah,
but that's the thing. Like John Mayer, I think like takes his job very seriously.
Yeah,
and
that's
so
cool.
And so I'm curious. Because I bet you he got home on Saturday night from those 3 shows and then just went right back to practice. I bet you he practiced all day Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. I bet you he's practicing today. I bet you he's practicing tomorrow. Because like I'm sure he's obsessed with putting on a good show with his fucked up hand, which I think that's kind of cool. You know?
I hope obviously John Mayer said he's going to be okay, but I think it'd be really fun for you to see a 3-finger show. I think that's so iconic. I think it's a bit of history. It's something that you'll never forget. It's one of those stories where like you're talking to your grandkids and you're like, you know, I've got a story about John Mayer, and I got to, you know, watch him play basketball, watch him play his guitar with 3 fingers.
Yeah,
and it's
have
an interesting
shred.
story. Yeah, it's an interesting story. It's
if
cool.
I leave that night and I go like, holy shit, that was a show, that'll be such a cool moment just because of the circumstance. And like in a weird way, it'll be more impressive because like
it'll be special.
The last show I saw, the Saturday night show of the week of Summer League, that was the best Dead show I've seen by far. And they played a bunch of my favorite songs, and John was just on fire all night. It was literally like a 10 out of 10 experience. That was like incredible. It was perfect. And like if I saw a pretty good show with 3 fingers, I'd probably be even more impressed.
I think that's cool. His flu game. I love that.
Did you have anything else for today?
No, man. That's it.
It's been good to finally get caught up and chat. I'm sorry that we both got to run back out of town.
Dude, we're both back at it.
I know.
Yeah, but that's all right. We'll be here for Rings of Power, and then we'll get some more stuff.
And we can actually hang out outside of the pod again.
I know,
we've been
seriously.
so busy, which will be nice.
Quick little shout out to our fans. Jason and I have seen like a ton of growth in the last like 2 months, right? And it's been really, really fun, and it's been super cool, and we just appreciate everybody's support. Like we really do. It's been fun to have this pod going on, and Jason and I do it, you know, as a labor of love. You know, we always joke around, but we're serious. Like we started this pod because we were driving our wives crazy when we'd always talk about Star Wars, and it's cool that people care about it, you know, and just honestly, thank you if you're supporting us.
It's fun looking back to those Star Wars conversations we used to have actually, because like Luke and I would literally just like. We'd have beers and our wives would be sitting at the other end of the bar with glasses of wine, and we'd just be sitting there like talking about Darth Plagueis and talk like we would just talk it out. Now we're not allowed to do that.
No, we're not.
Carly and Elena. But like I will say like this is a cool moment in the sense that like this is my second podcast that I've built out from scratch. And I remember with the State of the Lakers podcast that I was doing, like there's a grind, and then there's always like that moment when it starts to kind of take off a little bit, and it's such an exciting moment,
right?
And like that kind of is what's starting to happen with Two Sons that through the Acolyte,
right?
Ironically, the Acolyte of all the shows,
dude, I know,
like ended up being the one where it kind of happens, and this is a really cool moment. It's fun to see the growth, and again, like we literally couldn't do it without you guys and your consistent support. Like I know that we've started to build out an audience that's like completely separate from the Hoops Tonight audience too, which is really cool. Like because we're starting to get from the algorithm a lot of Star Wars fans and a lot of like those kinds of fans, and so we just really appreciate you guys.
For sure.
Thank you guys for rocking with us again. Like I get back August 18th. When do you get back?
We're gone for 6 days, so whenever that is.
Just
ask Elena.
Exactly. I'll ask Luke's wife, and I'll let you guys know.
Yeah.
But if August 18th is a Sunday, so I would imagine that early that next week, around like the 20th or the 21st, we'll have another episode for you guys. We'll talk
about our
High Republic book and talk about our trips.
Our trips, yeah. Cool, man.
All right, guys. As always, we appreciate you, and we will see you next time.
Thanks a lot.